so plain and precious. Finally, the Book of Mormon is the keystone of testimony. Just as the arch crumbles if the keystone is removed, so does all the church stand or fall with the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon. The enemies of the church understand this clearly.
Travis Wayne Gizzo. So, everybody's drunky for Christmas. So, views have tanked. People are out flying around. Or standing in long lines. Or sitting in long lines. Or whatever you're doing. And so, we'll just fool around. Do a forensic investigation of the Book of Mormon. You know, something nobody cares about. I saw Jasmine's latest video. Thanks for being a friend. I hope she didn't die, but that would explain why they've gone dark. Ghosting me. Gone silent after the last email that I got from her about the missionaries. So I hope everything's okay. But condolences if not. So, the Book of Mormon, says things, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints says things, and critics wrongly argue what the church says, as I just went over that video. Nobody actually does a forensic investigation to understand what a reporter is supposed to be doing in their reporting. Instead of doing polls or asking for people's feelings and responses, Senator, the congressman called you an ass. What's your response? I mean, yeah, it makes for funny TV, but it's not for news. They're not supposed to be having panel discussions about their feelings. They're supposed to be asking how, who, what, where, when, why, when, and to what extent. That's all they're supposed to do. And with the war in Israel, we are seeing that Islam has taken over the world and are now threatening everybody to conform and comply to Islam with the threat of violence and cancel culture. It's in the Book of Mormon. And so let's go over each of these in regards to the Book of Mormon to show you how it should have been done by everybody and wasn't. We'll start with who. This is where linguistic analysis is essential. This is a scientific measurement process which checks the linguistic patterns of the Book of Mormon with those contemporary with the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. We don't want to listen to what the Book of Mormon says. We don't want to listen to what Joseph Smith said. We don't want to listen to what the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints says. We need to do an independent, unbiased research. And so with computer technology, it's been made easier for us, and so we found out that Sidney Rigdon is the major author of the Book of Mormon. Let me write these down. Maybe we'll make a chart. Sidney. And so I have contributed, and apparently it's not getting around quick enough, if at all, have found that the rewritten 116 pages was Joseph Smith Sr. Those are the who. There are some others that are found in there. Parley P. Pratt and Oliver Cowdery. And so we're not asking the other questions yet. We're just dealing with who wrote the Book of Mormon. These are not the plagiarized documents. We're only talking about who wrote the Book of Mormon. Okay? And so then let's get into what is the Book of Mormon. It contains over 36 different contemporary authors. And this doesn't explain why. That's a different question. We're dealing with the facts of the Book of Mormon. We are not jumping to conclusions. We are not imposing a bias. We are not denying the science concerning this. These are the facts of the Book of Mormon. So Sidney Rigdon and Joseph Smith Sr. are the major authors of the Book of Mormon. And there are a couple others involved. Notice Junior is not involved. Because we are not going by what Joseph said. We are not going by what the church says. We are not going by any other Mormon who may have been involved and makes claims for. We are using science. We are not trusting anybody. We are using forensic investigative science. And then, once we get all these questions figured out, then we can input everybody's claims to see what's really going on. Okay. How? Does this answer, let's see, how is the Book of Mormon? This involves church history and understanding the historical context that made it. And so you need to understand that that needs to be somewhat after we get some of the Book of Mormon facts first. Then we test for how. Let's do when. Because we are able to identify Sidney Rigdon and Sr. as the major authors, it's the 1820s. It is not an ancient record. See how we did that? 1820s. That's when the Book of Mormon was written. And so that's not an ancient record. Where? This involves church history because we know where it was published, the particular press. But there are claims of where it was written. Harmony, and the church claims Susquehanna River rather than Harmony north of Pittsburgh. But since we know Sidney Rigdon is the major author of the Book of Mormon, he was in Ohio, where he was working on the Book of Mormon. Senior was at the Manchester farm when he had to rewrite the 116 pages. And so if you look on a map, that's quite a distance. That's several days' journey by horse. And why? This technically isn't needed for criminal investigation, but you always hear it from the press. You know, what is the motive? You don't need motive. If you have forensically established that somebody committed a crime, you can proceed with the trial against them. You don't need to know why. There is no reason for why. They committed a crime. Prosecute them. You got TV shows and movies all demanding that the prosecution know why before locking them up. You don't need a why. It's one of the major blunders of cop and lawyer shows. You don't need a motive. You don't ever need to know why. They committed the crime, and that's all you need to know. It's just like the Mormon, Ruby Franks. We don't need to know why she tortured her kids, even though we know why. It was the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that taught her to do that to her kids. But that doesn't change the outcome of the sentence. She needs the death penalty. So I hope the judge dismisses the plea agreement. It shocks everybody. I do not accept this plea agreement. Death penalty! That would be awesome. Get judges finally doing the right thing. Psychologist. God. I warned you about psychology, and then boom, a whole bunch of psychologists this year. But for this purpose, knowing the why is where it began. See, we know where it was written, but where did it start from? What was the source? And that requires church history research. And that's Canandaigua, New York on 9/11, 1826. Because that's where Joseph Smith Sr. was the master mason of the Lodge of the Yorkites. And that was where William Morgan was working on his book to expose a threat to the United States of America. And so again, doing those same questions, we're able to come up with this answer, that was the birthplace of the Book of Mormon. That because of William Morgan getting exposed, he was unable to finish the book. And so as the Master Mason, Joseph Smith Sr. is responsible for making sure the book got finished. And thus, we now see why Sidney Rigdon is the major author. Thus, we see why Joseph Smith Sr. had to rewrite the 116 pages. 116 pages were still available. Because now we can input some of the other claims that people were making. So Joseph Smith, before Martin Harris arrives, Joseph Smith says that he was copying the characters from the plates. There were no plates, obviously. And so he was copying from the original 116 pages. And so what he was doing, we now know because we have all the facts. But to what extent, that's part of what I was getting to with being a Master Mason of Canandaigua Lodge and having a duty to complete the book for William Morgan and freeing him from captivity and getting him out of the country to save his life. and why he has to keep it all a secret. So here we have why and to what extent. Combined here is to also how. Is that there is an enemy that we're threatening to murder and destroy the documents, to keep their secret a secret. So it was necessary for the original documents to be put far away, and thus Sidney Rigdon. So, alrighty, see how that was done? Easy breezy cover girl. And you do that for every single part that you branch out from. Because obviously as we go over this, we are finding more stuff to do research on. And I'd already done that, and that's why I've been doing my videos the way I've been doing my videos for you. And so now when we go through and examine the Book of Mormon itself, knowing this factual information, we see that Joseph Smith is telling us in the introduction that it is written by the spirit of prophecy and revelation. And 2 times in the Book of Mormon, it refers to both the prophesying and the revelation of the Book of Mormon. And in 1 Nephi chapter 1 verse 2, it begins with, it's in the learning of the Jews. So now we got to do the investigation for what is the learning of the Jews. And then you'd find out that it's Jewish Kabbalah, and you would need to learn Jewish Kabbalah to understand, and then go through the Book of Mormon and find out that Joe Samson already had done all the work for us and is written by the finger of God, showing the other contemporary works used in the Book of Mormon, Jewish Kabbalah literature. And so when you come across Jesus in 3 Nephi 11, you then have to know what the learning of the Jews are in regards to their interpretation of the religion and their scripture and who their Christ is. Because you would notice immediately that Jesus is not the Christ of the Jews. But then you'd have to do the same process for the Gospels in the New Testament, as you keep branching out with more things to research. And you'd learn that the Jews were the ones who wrote the Gospels. And so they're not talking about Jesus, even though Jesus is the name of the character they use. And you can easily figure this out if you comprehendo Inglés, or butchered accent Spanish. By seeing what the author in Matthew is telling us. He's saying that he's giving the genealogy of Jesus, and it's the genealogy of Joseph. Then he says that the prophecy of Isaiah is that the name is supposed to be Emmanuel, and so they call him Jesus. There's some obvious problems that should be blatantly obvious to everyone. And yet people just ignore it and move on, call him Jesus. And so you'd understand Constantine, therefore, in the Nicene Creed as being the cause of that confusion, as it turned this into literal history and not the learning of the Jews, as a prophecy for the latter days. All right. Easy breezy cover girl. Or maybe it's Maybelline. And so every time a Mormon says that the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus, it's a lie. The prophets are lying to us. Nelson, lying. Who lies to their people? A false prophet. And so then you go through, why are they lying to us? Well, it's so that they can get back their kingdom and put everybody in bondage and sex slavery. Page 290 and 291. You can get the PDF online. Look it up for yourself. So, it's really that simple. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints falls, as Benson says, because the Book of Mormon is completely different than what the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints claims it is. But the Book of Mormon does stand with the truth. It is what it is. It is in the learning of the Jews, as it says it is, because we've done the forensic investigation. And so we know who the authors are, and that, yes, indeed, they are using Jewish Kabbalah and all that goes along with Jewish Kabbalah, and therefore we know that it is a book of warning. Hey, Joseph Smith's 1838 tells us that that's what the Book of Mormon is. It is a warning. And so all of the stories are correct as a warning to us right now, because it gives us the dates of the latter days too, also in the learning of the Jews. Because that's a part of Jewish Kabbalah, is not only dream interpretation, but astronomy. And astronomy gives us star dates to work with. And sorry, it ain't the Roman period. So, yeah, both of you got it wrong. Mormons are wrong because they're trusting in the prophets who are lying to them. And they're blatantly lying, and Mormons refuse to acknowledge that the prophets are lying to them and lying to the world. And it branches out from there when you see the church website talking about how they're celebrating Jesus' birth this year for Christmas. And Mormons purposely erase from their minds any investigation of the background for why it's Christmas and why it's Jesus and why, because it gets ugly. Because as non-Trinitarian, Heavenly Father has a body of flesh and bone and comes down to earth from outer space to his 14-year-old daughter Mary and rapes her to produce Jesus, his only begotten Son. And that is very abominable. And so the name of the church, Stanford finally is getting around to doing research on comparing the Doctrine and Covenants, and has emailed me or commented about how he noticed that the chapter heading for chapter 22, was it? In the earlier Doctrine and Covenants, or Book of Commandments, Joseph Smith is referred to as a seer. Let's see if it is 22. Yeah. Revelation given through Joseph Smith the prophet. Originally it was seer. And so he was looking to find out who is responsible for making the change in 1981's edition. Well, I've been telling you all these years. Bruce R. McConkie. Bruce R. McConkie put in all of the chapter headings for all of the scriptures. That is Bruce R. McConkie. All the errors are from him. And he's purposely toning down Joseph Smith, because a seer is greater than a prophet. We know this from the Book of Mormon. Ammon talking to King Limhi. And so, Yeah, and changing the dates of Section 10. It's 1829, Bruce. 1829. And not acknowledging that the temple was what Samson tore down. Bruce won't say temple. He says building. And Ezekiel 38 says that Jesus is coming in the midst of the wars. Where is he, Bruce? Where is he? Are we still having to wait for the midst of the wars? Nelson said it's any day now. When is it? When? So, yeah, all these things, the prophets do know they are lying to Mormons. But for critics to fall for the church's traps, as the church is lying, and critics only say, no, that's a lie, then what's the truth? And so they reveal that they're not even bothering to do an investigation as they spread the false information that the church has lied about. So polygamy, translation, the writing of the Book of Mormon, etc., etc., etc. Because they did not do a forensic investigation. They trusted in what people said. Ready? So I'm lonely, I'm bored. I guess I can go back to the wedding dress fashion.